Plus Tax Entertainment presents Frank's Fury, a risk-taker's adventure, written by Troy Bello and narrated by 11 Laps. As the sun sets over the crystal blue waters of the Caribbean, a group of men sit huddled around a bonfire on a secluded beach. They call themselves the risk-takers, a band of mercenaries who make their living taking on the most dangerous and daring jobs that others won't touch. Among them is Security Frank, a hothead hustler and self-proclaimed assassin, with a chip on his shoulder and a Glock in his hand, which he carries with him everywhere he goes. But when the risk-takers are hired to take on a mysterious job on a remote island, they soon find themselves embroiled in a deadly game of cat and mouse. As they navigate treacherous waters and face impossible odds, Frank's fury is unleashed, and nothing will stand in his way. Buckle up for a wild ride with the risk-takers as they fight for their lives and seek redemption in Frank's fury. Chapter 1. Vintage Obsession. Troy Bello and his younger brother, Security Frank, were enjoying a beautiful day on a secluded island somewhere in the world. The white sands and lush green hills made the place feel like another planet. They were accompanied by some gorgeous women and a cooler full of expensive drinks, including Frank's beloved Valpolicella, a rare and expensive vintage wine. As they relaxed on the beach, Frank was in his own world, completely obsessed with the wine. The women noticed his fixation and teased him. "Frank, you're making us jealous with that bottle." Frank replied with a sly grin, "Don't be jealous, ladies. This bottle is my one true love." He then proceeded to describe the wine's notes and flavors in detail, making the women roll their eyes but also secretly impressed. Just as they were about to crack open the bottle, a military helicopter appeared out of nowhere and began to blow everything around. The food flew off the table, wine glasses spilled, and the women screamed. A soldier descended from the helicopter on a rope and marched over to Troy and Frank. "Gentlemen, I'm afraid I must ask you to come with me immediately," he said in a stern tone. And with that, their peaceful day turned into chaos. Chapter 2. Frank's Quest for the Message Inside the Bottle. Frank and Troy were in an army helicopter, flying who knows where with a general they didn't know. Both men were calm on the surface, but inside they were worried. Frank, in particular, was fuming. Not because he was in an army helicopter, but because his expensive bottle of Valpolicella was gone, destroyed by the chopper's blades. He didn't care about the general or the government or their situation. All he could think about was who was going to pay for his wine. It wasn't just any wine. It was a prized possession, carefully selected and saved for a special occasion. Now it was gone, shattered and scattered, lost to the sea. Troy tried to calm him down, but Frank was inconsolable. He demanded to know where they were going and why they were there. But the general didn't say a word, just looked straight ahead. Frank decided to focus his anger on finding a way to get reimbursed for his wine, even if it meant taking on the entire government. As they flew over the vast ocean, Frank couldn't help but wonder if there was a message inside the bottle that was lost. Maybe it was a sign from the universe, a warning or a message of hope. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something important in that bottle, and he had to find it. So, Frank set out on a quest to recover his bottle and uncover the message inside. He had no idea where it would take him, but he was determined to get to the bottom of it. The general and Troy looked at him like he was crazy, but Frank didn't care. He had a mission, a purpose, and nothing would stand in his way. With each passing moment, the mystery of the bottle consumed him. Frank couldn't rest until he found the answers he was looking for. The quest had begun, and Frank was ready to take on the world to get what he wanted. Chapter 3. Downed and Out. The sound of gunfire echoed through the helicopter as Troy and Frank huddled down, trying to avoid the bullets flying through the air. The attacker was skilled, taking out soldiers left and right, and even managing to shoot the pilot in the head. The general, who had been so stoic before, was now frantically trying to return fire, but he couldn't get a clear shot. In the chaos, Frank took control of the helicopter, narrowly avoiding a crash into the sea. Troy spotted an island in the distance and shouted to Frank, "There's an island over there, we can make it!" Frank, determined not to let his beloved bottle of wine slip away from him, expertly guided the helicopter towards the island. But the attacker wasn't done yet. They took another shot at the already damaged helicopter, and it was too much to bear. The helicopter spiraled out of control and crashed into the water. Miraculously, Troy and Frank survived the crash, but they were battered and bruised. As they swam to shore, Frank turned to Troy and muttered, "They're going to have to pay for this bottle in blood." As they stumbled onto the island, they quickly realized they were in a dangerous situation. They had no idea who had attacked them or why, but they knew they couldn't let their guard down. They huddled together, unsure of what to do next. Chapter 4. Thriving. Troy and Frank had always been adventurous, but they never imagined they would end up stranded on a deserted island. Luckily, their love for survival shows like Naked and Afraid paid off. They were able to use their knowledge to build shelters, start fires, and gather food. The brothers worked tirelessly, and within 24 hours, they had accomplished more than they ever thought possible. Their father, known as the Ox, had always instilled in them the importance of being able to survive in any situation. He had taught them everything he knew about living off the land, and it was paying off now. As they sat by the fire, roasting a fish they had caught earlier in the day, they marveled at how far they had come. They had built 3 different shelters, each with its own unique features. One was closer to the water, another was in a clearing, and the third was hidden away in the jungle. They had also learned how to start fires using different methods, including rubbing sticks together and using a makeshift magnifying glass. The fires not only provided warmth, but they also kept the bugs away. As the night went on, they talked about their favorite episodes of Naked and Afraid and joked about how they would do if they were ever on the show. They even tried to reenact some of the challenges they had seen on the show. But just as they were settling in for the night, they heard a rumble in the distance. It sounded like an explosion, and it was coming from the other side of the island. They looked at each other and knew that they had to investigate. It was time to see what else this island had in store for them. Chapter 5. Shadows in the Fields. Troy and Frank cautiously made their way towards the source of the explosion, tracking the scent of burning marijuana through the dense jungle. As they approached an open field, their eyes widened in disbelief at what lay before them. The air was thick with the pungent aroma of freshly harvested cannabis plants, neatly arranged in rows as far as the eye could see. It was evident that someone had put a lot of effort into this operation, and from the looks of it, it was a highly successful one at that. The brothers moved silently through the rows, scanning for any signs of life. Suddenly, they spotted a group of soldiers walking towards them, their weapons at the ready. Troy and Frank quickly ducked down, blending into the foliage. They knew they needed to act fast, but they also couldn't afford to make any mistakes. As the soldiers drew closer, Frank sprang up like a jack-in-the-box, launching a surprise attack on the closest one. With lightning speed, he grabbed the soldier by the neck, snapping it with a sickening crack. Troy watched in awe, marveling at his brother's unexpected skill. Frank swiftly relieved the dead soldier of his gear, including his gun and earpiece. Together, they silently moved through the fields, taking out several more soldiers with precision and deadly force. The only sound was the rustling of the plants as they disappeared into the night. After a few minutes of stealthy movement, Troy and Frank spotted a small crop-dusting plane parked near the edge of the field. They knew this was their ticket off the island, but getting to it wouldn't be easy. They quickly changed into the stolen army gear, blending in with the remaining soldiers. They moved carefully towards the plane, staying low to avoid detection. Suddenly, a barrage of bullets ripped through the air, shattering the silence. Troy and Frank hit the dirt, returning fire as best they could. They knew they had to take out the shooter before they could make their escape. With a well-timed shot, Frank managed to hit the shooter, and the firing ceased. The two brothers quickly made their way to the plane, starting it up and taking off into the dark sky. As they soared over the island, they couldn't help but wonder what other secrets lay hidden in the shadows. Chapter 6. Island Escape to Barbados. Troy and Frank breathe a sigh of relief as they take off in the stolen crop duster and leave the island of their ordeal behind. As they ascend into the sky, they frantically try to locate their current position and chart a course to safety. With only a rudimentary knowledge of piloting and navigation, the journey to safety is fraught with danger. The two men scan the horizon for signs of life, a beacon, anything that could help them. They soon realize that they are truly on their own, left to rely on their wits and determination. With their fuel gauge hovering at a dangerously low level, they decide to make a beeline for Barbados, a favorite island of theirs and their mother's birthplace. As they fly over the Caribbean Sea, the stunning beauty of the crystal-clear waters, white sandy beaches, and lush greenery below soothe their nerves. They begin to reminisce about their childhood summers spent on the island, the warmth of the people, the delicious food, and the vibrant culture. As they approach the coast of Barbados, they encounter turbulence, and the aircraft starts to shake uncontrollably. The situation is critical, and they must find a safe place to land quickly. They remember a small airfield on the outskirts of Bridgetown, the capital city, and set their sights on it. As they descend to the runway, they can see a small crowd gathering. People are pointing, taking pictures, and shouting excitedly. The two men are relieved and overjoyed to be on safe ground again. As they step out of the plane, they are met by a throng of reporters and well-wishers, eager to hear their incredible story of survival. They spend the next few days in Barbados, basking in the warm Caribbean sun. As they watch the sunset over the azure sea, they reflect on their adventure and vow to never take life for granted again. The escape to Barbados marks the end of their harrowing journey, but it is also a new beginning for the two men. They have been tested and pushed to their limits, but they have emerged stronger, more resilient, and more appreciative of life's blessings. Chapter 6. Risk Takers. Unite, Bridgetown Edition. After arriving in Bridgetown, Troy and Frank waste no time in contacting their trusted allies, the risk takers. They need some heavy-duty backup to figure out what's going on and deal with the dangerous situation they've stumbled upon. Frank reaches out to T-Drip, a renowned explosives expert and member of the risk takers. T-Drip is known for his skills in blowing up streets and taking on high-stakes missions like a true hotshot. Within hours, T-Drip and a team of elite risk-takers arrive on the island, ready to assist Troy and Frank in their mission. With their combined expertise and firepower, they're determined to get to the bottom of this mystery and take down whoever is responsible. As they gear up for their next move, the tension is high and the stakes are even higher. Will they be able to overcome the challenges ahead and emerge victorious, or will they fall victim to the dangers that lurk in the shadows of this island paradise? Only time will tell. Chapter 9. The Explosive Takeover. Troy, Frank, and T-Drip put their plan into action and head back to the island. T-Drip sets up explosives as a diversion in the jungle, hoping to draw out some of the soldiers from the compound before they make their move. As the explosions go off in the distance, the team moves in on the compound, taking down the doors with a blast. They quickly gain control of the situation, taking the soldiers by surprise and holding their most important person hostage. To their surprise, it's the head man of the operation who is there that day, and they finally come face to face with their enemy. They demand answers, wanting to know who was behind the assassination attempt and why they were targeted. The head man is tight-lipped, but they manage to gather some valuable information. They realize that this is just the tip of the iceberg, and there are bigger forces at play. With their hostage in tow, the team makes their way out of the compound, knowing that they are now in even more danger. They must regroup and come up with a new plan to take on these bigger forces and put an end to the dangerous game they're being forced to play. Chapter 10. The Interrogation. The risk-takers had finally gotten the information they needed from their captive, but tensions were still running high. Frank walked into the room looking disheveled and exhausted. He demanded to know who was responsible for the assassination attempt on him and Troy. The group informed Frank that their captive was only a small-time player, a pawn in a larger game. The real culprits were still out there, and they needed to be taken down. In a fit of rage, Frank lunged at the captive, choking him with his bare hands. One of the risk-takers pulled Frank off of the man, reminding him that they needed him alive. Troy stepped in, calming Frank down and reminding him that they could use the captive to get to the real mastermind behind the plot. He revealed that the captive had a stash of valuable liquor in his office upstairs, and Frank couldn't resist the temptation. As Frank raided the captive's stash, He took out his anger and frustration by chugging a $10,000 bottle of whiskey and spitting it in the captive's face. The man trembled in fear, thinking he was about to be lit on fire by Frank's lighter. But Frank just wanted a few puffs of his blunt before they set off on their next mission. The risk-takers had a new target in their sights, and they were determined to take them down, no matter the cost. The journey continues. As the smoke from Frank's blunt fills the air, the risk-takers look around at each other, nodding in agreement. They had made a decision, one that would change the course of their lives. They were going to stay on the island, cultivate their own crop of marijuana, and wait for their enemies to come to them. Frank takes one last puff and passes the blunt to Troy, who grins as he takes it. And with that, the story of Frank's fury comes to an end. But the story of the risk-takers is far from over. Who knows what adventures they will find themselves on next? One thing is for sure, wherever they go, trouble is sure to follow. So thank you for joining us on this wild ride, and please, stay tuned for the next chapter in the risk-takers' journey. Who knows what kind of trouble they'll get into next?